metropolitan of Kampala and stayed at the mission center in Nyonyintono for 7 years, where he learned the Orthodox way of life as a teenager.
We move over to Soroti, where the long-standing trade disputes between Uganda and its neighbors over substandard grains will soon be over, as factories are now being put in a place to combat aflatoxins into the food supply chain. A grain drying plant has been established in Busia and another in Soroti Industrial Park to ensure that there are no more aflatoxins in the grains. The plants are to help farmers in the eastern Uganda to properly dry their grains before exportation. A drive in Soroti Industrial Park shows many factories emerging. One of these factories nearing completion is a PELA Commodities Limited, a grain drying and processing plant. Uganda and Danish engineers are installing a state-of-art grain drying and processing plant, the first of its kind in Uganda and the whole of Africa. The grain drying and processing plant is to help farmers in Teso sub-region to eliminate aflatoxins in their grains. This means that the long-standing trade wars between Uganda and its neighbors over aflatoxins will soon be over once this factory becomes operational. Now, to avoid the challenge of inconsistent supply, PELA Commodities Limited has already embarked on farmers' recruitment and offering them extension services. The factory by PELA Commodities Limited will help supplement government's grain drying machine in Busia and the general post-harvest handling challenges by Ugandan farmers.
Away from issues of grains, we now move to Compassion International, where over 2,000 children who have been under the care of Compassion International in Kabale district are now looking for other sponsors after the closure of 2 compassion projects. The Kisasi and All Saints Church Child Development Centers phased out and are said to be merged with other projects. The Compassion International Country Director Mugisha Leni appreciated the partnership with the Diocese of Kigezi and called for stakeholders' intervention as they identify other supporters. The Bishop of the Diocese of Kigezi, Right Reverend George Bamo Nkunda, asked the Compassion overseers, staff and parents to train children and ensure they are involved in church programs to ensure quality of students. State Minister for Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, who doubles as NRM Chairperson Kabale District, David Bahati thanked the church in partnering with Compassion International for helping vulnerable children in the community. Bahati urged religious leaders to guide believers to focus on income-generating activities for sustainable wealth among Christians. Bahati appealed to parents to mobilize their children to go to schools because government is providing free education to all learners from primary up to senior 6.
In another story, Kawempe Muslim leaders are asking for a meeting with President Museveni to air out their grievances and challenges faced by the Muslim community. Now, they made the remarks while meeting the Minister for Kampala, Hajat Minsa Kawanda, to forge ways of revamping their welfare of Muslims through her umbrella body of the Road to Rescue Muslims. Kawempe Muslim leaders are requesting for a meeting with the President Yoweri Museveni to air out their grievances and also ways of improving livelihood of the Muslim fraternity. Muslims allege that meeting with prominent leaders, leaving out those on the ground, have failed to address their challenges. The Minister for Kampala, also the chairperson of the Roads to Rescue Muslims, asked Muslims not to judge the president on some matters because of some of them act in secrecy. The Muslim leaders were urged to venture into other programs to improve their welfare and also embrace government programs. The Road to Rescue Muslims has embarked on ensuring that innocent Muslims imprisoned on charges of terrorism are investigated and released. Now, over 80 sheikhs have been released since the inception of the Road to Rescue Muslims Association.
And looking at a very fast story while we look at Queen Elizabeth does test positive for COVID-19. Now, the Queen has tested positive for COVID, and Buckingham Palace came out to say that the monarch is experiencing a mild cold-like symptoms but expects to continue light duties at Windsor over the coming week. Now, the palace also came out to say she will continue to receive medical attention and will follow all appropriate guidelines. It added in the statement, now her eldest son and her heir, Prince of Wales, tested positive on the 10th of February after meeting his mother on 8th February. Now, it is understood a number of people have tested positive in Windsor Castle, where the Queen also resides. Now, still in international stories, Ukraine tension, Biden agrees in principle to summit with Putin. U.S. President Joe Biden has agreed in principle to hold a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the crisis over Ukraine. Now, the summit proposed by France will only take place if Russia does not invade its neighbor, the White House also said. Now, the talks could offer possible diplomatic solutions to one of the worst security crises in Europe in the decades. Now, U.S. officials say intelligence suggests Russia is ready in launch a military operation, which Moscow denies, but the proposal was announced by the French presidency after 2 phone calls between Presidents Emmanuel Macron and Putin, which went on for almost 3 hours in totality. Now back to Africa, we're looking at 7 children killed in Niger by Nigerian airstrike. Now 7 children have been killed in Niger in an airstrike by Nigerian army targeting the bandits, a local governor said, and a statement in relation to the same was issued. 5 more were hurt in the apparently accidental strike, the governor of Niger's Maradi region told AFP news router. Now, Governor Chibu Abubakar said the 4 were killed instantly and 3 died in their way to hospital. Now, State TV said the attack happened in Nachedi village, where the Nigerian officials also said that they are carrying out investigations in relation to what could have gone wrong.
We look at Brazil, where climate change neglect contributes to deadly mudslides. Now, the landslides that devastated the Brazilian mountain city of Petrópolis this week demolished houses and ripped families apart, scarred hillsides and huts, and also left at least 120 dead and nearly as many missing. And it was all largely predictable and to some degree preventable. Now, rapid urbanization, poor planning, lack of financing for subsidized housing, all of these things have afflicted the city in Rio de Janeiro state, and little has been done in response to repeated warnings about the risks of mountainside construction. Researchers as well as the current former public servants have said. Now that with evidence indicating the climate change is causing more intense rains, peril has only increased not just for Petrópolis but elsewhere too. Now, Antonio Guerra, a geography professor at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, has studied weather-related catastrophes in Petrópolis for at least 30 years, and he has visited dozens of sites where houses and lives were swallowed by the torrents of mud and investigated the root cause. Now, rain is the great villain, but the main cause is poor land use. Now, there is a total lack of planning, as Antonio told the Associated Press. More than 1,500 people have died in similar landslides in the recent decades in that portion of Sierra, and also there has been more than 400 deaths from heavy storms in Petrópolis alone since 1981.
Well, very, very, very sad scenes right there. However, every single morning, you know that we would love you to be part of our conversations. Now, this morning in the poll question, before I actually get into it, Uganda is a country we heavily depend on agriculture, meaning that it is our backbone, it is our life, okay? So with that, you know, being put in perspective, we look at some of the products that we have produced. When you follow a couple of years ago, we've seen some of Ugandan agriculture products being denied by the people we export them to. Talk about the eggs that we used to export to Kenya, talk about the maize and all that. So this morning, we would love to know from you, what do you think can actually be done to enhance Uganda's agriculture products to be able to attract the international market? It is the usual drill. email. You can send us your feedback, and that is Twitter. The hashtag is UBCGMU. Certainly we'll be sharing what you have to say to the rest of Uganda much later on as the show goes on. But also still, every single time, you know that Robert has something to say concerning boosting your health, concerning the OPEC bottle. I don't know whether that he'll talk about on a Monday, but well, he's a very unpredictable man. Robert.
Well, Monday, people are coming from the weekend and many have to go to work. But some could be having problems, hangover. Well, here I present to you the magic. Hallelujah tamarind drink. Just take this and that challenge, that laziness, joint pains, weakness, dizziness, this will do you good in addition to boosting your immune system. Now, those that like sweet things, yet healthy, I come Hallelujah Jinga tea. This drink will not only boost your immune system, but also it's very tasty and at your own convenience. Maybe you're going home, you're just thinking through this and that. This will help you because it is tasty, very convenient for you to take, and will leave you as sober as when you started consuming it.
Well, there you go. Anyway, we'll be going in for the song that will be inspiring you this Monday morning. But right after that, we'll be having Good Morning Uganda Newsreel. And of course, that will be moderated by Robert. Much later on, we'll also be taking you to the roads, the traffic updates. What's the situation like now that it has rained and it's a Monday morning? You know, the relationship between those two things in Uganda here is unexplainable. But we'll also be giving you the situation. And thereafter, Mollen will also be coming in with the updates from climate and also probably be giving you the forecast for much later on today. And also we'll be looking at the GMU agenda, and Ruben will also be in the house to give you some of the sports updates. Now, we are streaming live on YouTube, so you can carry us anywhere in your car, in your office, to make sure that you get all these details. For now, we get into the inspiration this morning. Good morning. We'll be back shortly.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by
how to get points. Just use MTN to make calls, send SMS, load airtime, buy bundles, or pay for MTN subscription services.
everywhere you go. MTN.
Our story isn't a new one. It's not about where we come from. It's about what can be accomplished when we're working, living, and growing together. It's about speaking the same language, the language of progress. We're Ugandans building Uganda with Ugandans, skilling Ugandans and developing competencies required in the oil and gas sector, partnering with Ugandan businesses to achieve greatness. We're here to build because at the end of the day, we're truly Ugandan.
Start the year off with my Airtel 4G smartphone. You get to enjoy free 1 GB data valid for a month and 100% bonus data every month for 3 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings. This includes free data spread over 3 months worth 86,500 Uganda shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 Uganda shillings only. Visit the nearest Airtel shop and get one today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Raising voices.
I feel happy when my father spends time with me. I hope all fathers will like my father. I want my father to reach out to all fathers. He knows how important it is to be a good father. I promise to help my father inspire other fathers to change.
In this time of COVID, what is your promise to the children of Uganda? Because a violence-free childhood is everyone's right. Raising voices.
Start your day bright and early with Good Morning Bundles from Airtel. That's right. Enjoy brighter days with 2 GB at 5,000 shillings, valid for 24 hours. Join that morning agent meeting. Close that online business deal. Catch up with loved ones. Do it all with the most affordable data bundles. Dial *175# to buy Good Morning Bundles from 12 a.m. to 11:59 a.m. and enjoy 2 GB, valid for 24 hours from time of purchase. Good Morning Bundles for the best day ahead with Airtel, the smartphone network.
Are your children ready to learn? Schools are open. As parents and guardians, it is your duty to ensure that your children go back to school. COVID-19 prevention measures have been put in place to keep students safe as they go back to school. Not only do teachers prioritize everyone's health, including their own, but they discourage violence among students. They also ensure that students follow SOPs. Any concerns are reported to a school administrator or senior woman or man teacher for correction and further guidance. Dear parents and guardians, you too must play your role. Ensure your children always maintain a 2-meter distance from others, avoid crowded places, regularly wash their hands with soap and water, and wear a washed and clean face mask that covers their mouths and noses. Please keep your children at home if they're feeling sick, and take note. In our effort to keep students safe, There are no visitation days or any other school visits allowed. Let's share knowledge, not COVID-19. This message is supported by the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education and Sports, and UNICEF. Stay safe.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning once again and welcome to the hour of 7. Exact 3 minutes past the hour of 7, so that informs you of how fast you should be for you to meet your destination and of course your program of the day. It is Good Morning Uganda. We are here every morning. That is from the hour of 6:30 till 9. We're here to spice up your morning. Now, over the weekend, there were a series of meetings that were being held by members of the border community in Uganda. Right from Mukono, they had a number of meetings, different bodies governing borders in their organizations were meeting. What was the meetings all about? The new proposed regulations that are going to govern this industry in Kampala. These include, first and foremost, registration. And here they were given 4 months to ensure that there's thorough registration, where each rider is mandated first and foremost to present a vaccination card if they are to be registered. They must have a national ID because their NIN number is a must, and this will be on the jackets they're going to be carrying. One must have a riding permit or a driving license for that matter. You should have a specific stage, and on that stage the number plate of the motorcycle that one is using should be clearly governed or registered in that process. But also one area that has caused confusion amongst the entire registration process is the plan that a border must work in his area where they reside, and these people will not be allowed, that is, to cross from one division to the other. In case you're carrying a passenger, you must move with that passenger, then at a certain point hand the passenger to the next person to carry them to their destination. This is one of the areas where they find it problematic, where they say many have been traversing various divisions for their clientele. Now what's going to happen? And also another contentious issue here is the issue of vaccination. Many are saying, well, we could be vaccinated, but where has this applied to the latter? Why to the border community? Now, I don't know when my colleagues last used a border because one was telling me that a border is unavoidable evil. We know it has so many accidents, has so many challenges. This is what they want to limit, but we end up using them. Philo, when did you last use a border?
Well, about 2 weeks ago, I think, yes. And I mean, they're still operating, they're still in town, you know, they're still doing their thing, but you can see the pressure and the tensions are really, really high, you know, and I picked that from the conversations that they forcefully give you while you are taking you to your destination. You have to listen by all means.
You have to listen.
Yes.
Let me get to know from the man with specs. When did you last use a border?
How is that identical? I apparently used one even this weekend. Just a very small distance. Yeah, I had to prefer. I was really tired of driving, so I had to for a small distance. Yes, just this weekend.
Now, Felix, we know that just in Kampala you have about 28,000 border motorcyclists in this country, in Kampala alone, and this is the source of livelihood. They have families they fend for. We've just seen a massive force being used on hawkers, vendors to keep the city clean. Now here comes in the issue of borders. Work in your specific division, the 5 divisions of Kampala. Then second, there is a free zone where borders will not be allowed. Looking at all this, what does this mean in terms of decongesting the city? Is this the quickest problem that has to be dealt with? And is this a solution as far as having order in the city?
Who congests the city is the first question we must answer. before we talk about decongesting, are we looking at the right people to decongest?
Trust me, the vendors and hawkers, they are now gone.
So,
second, we believe at the borders.
Do the borders fall in the category that congest the city? Because are they permanent in the city, or they are in transit?
They have permanent stages. Where you'll find that.
So are we dealing? You see, we must be quite straight in approach to avoid causing collateral damage. The requirements for registration, some of them are valid. Like, for example, in national identification, it is a good incentive for security purposes. The issue of organizing yourselves into stages is also good for security purposes, which is key, and also coming from the background where we have seen border people being a part of lots of criminalities. You know, there's out of 10 crimes, at least 3 of them will be related to borders, you know. Now, I don't want us to forget what we discussed, I think something related to this last week. And I told you, and I'll say again, you must be quite categorical to understand the crowd you're dealing with, the audience you're seeking. One, as a matter of fact, as I said and I'll repeat, this industry is by far marred by informal or illiterate people, and in terms of academics, that's a matter of fact. Secondly, you look at the kind of their subject matter of the business, which is the motorbike. 80% of people who ride them don't own them.
They're loan schemes.
But also third, they are not habitants of the city where you want to organize. People come as far as Chengera.
So here,
then they ride in Kampala.
On that is a proposal in your area of residence.
Now, focus on the 3 issues, unless you want to wipe out this industry. But these 3 issues, you must keep them in mind. 1, the literacy levels. Now, some of the requirements are meant for someone to be literate. Talk about, like last time when the president came out, tell them to get books and register. It was quite a bit tricky. How many of them can even write? If some of you have interacted with the border community, you know what we are talking about. So, illiteracy, ownership of the subject matter of work is in question. But third, now, that put aside, Robert, if you want to decongest the city, why don't we have a phased plan of doing things? Why don't we have a phased plan of doing things? In as much as by the borders have their challenges, I have come here and testified that they have so many good things. Me, I will focus on the small thing that at least I've been witness to. I've never found a road accident and the Kirabo stopped in his very nice Benz or Pajero to take that person. My personal experience, I don't know for you they stopped, but me what I've seen. Always, border guys can never go past someone who has got a problem on the road. Even us who drive, when you get a problem, the first people to stop. So they have been modest. We can bank on that for a few things. But if you put them out of the city, we must ask ourselves 2 or 3 questions. 1, Robert, borders are out of town. Does that decongest the town?
Assumably, according to KCCA, they believe.
What causes decongestion? You see, we need to, you see, if you want to solve a problem, you may have to work backward. What causes
the road network, poor planning of development.
It is simply about physical planning. It is that. It is simply that. Okay, now the rains have started coming. You're going to see floods. Who do we send out of
Yet
Kampala?
The borders then are packed because they may not be.
So who do we send out of Kampala for the floods? Or who do we blame? Because at the end of the day, what it looks more like the authorities are playing a blame game. Because they couldn't have good physical planning, vendors are in the streets. Because our roads are not well done or they are not wide enough.
They're looking at the indiscipline of borders.
The indiscipline is an issue of morality. You'd never mix morality and law vis-a-vis policy. Those things are totally permanently parallel. Morality is another problem. You cannot tell me that you're going to take your daughter to police or to court because she didn't kneel down when she was greeting you. It could be immoral, but it's not illegal. So their bad manners is another story. We are talking about issues of policy. Principle. In principle, if border borders, just imagine border borders are not in Kampala, does that deal with congestion between you and me? Some of us have gone in this city since we were children. You have been around these cities, you know. If we put out border borders, will that stop? The problem is with the institutions themselves. If you want to chase away border people, which we don't disagree with, and you're still licensing buildings to be built in roads or road reserves, are we solving the problem? You get it? What kind of buildings are in Kampala? You're talking about issues of parking. You still have challenges of even, you know, how do you remove the 5 million day occupants? How do you reduce that number? Fine, you've put away the vendors, okay? The borders, okay?
Next in the often are taxis, by the way.
Well, we are waiting to see how that happens. But I think as we do this, the authorities also need to be part of the solution, not just chasing away vendors, border taxis. They must be part of the solution, that as we are trying to tackle the other side, what do we need to do from the technical part?
Philo, when we look at all these plans by KCCA, by government to regulate, one thing that comes to our mind, are there any positives? Because many bring out the negatives. So I want to look at both sides. Many are telling you, these people, we've had a reduction in crime because they have been having other ways of getting money. Others are telling you that away from the crime, you're going to see an increased domestic violence in their homes. We've just come from this period of COVID-19. That timing, others are saying it's good because they're indisciplined, people just drive. If you go to the casualty ward in Mulago, you find that maybe 90% are results of border. Let's take us through both sides of the coin, if at all we can have that.
Well, I mean, we can't ignore the fact that this has an impact both socially and both socially, both negatively and positively. Let's first look at the practicability of this. These border gentlemen have been given 4 months, all right, to do all the registration that they need. Of course, that comes in with a lot of money. Back in 2021, for you to get a stage, a border man had to part away with about 500,000 Uganda shillings to about 1 million.
Yes, very true.
We've been under lockdown for 2 years, 500,000 Ugandan shillings. I am thinking that with now we're in 2022, that price, there are chances that it's going to hike. How many border men can actually afford to pay that amount of money to get a stage? All right. So you are pushing them to outside of Kampala. Most of them did leave their areas of residence to come into Kampala to get the money. Why? Maybe because their clientele wasn't really built up back where they were. So you're putting them back where they came from to come and make the money. Do you know what that actually is going to result into? Not everyone can afford that money. You're sending them back home where they don't have this clientele that they had already built in Kampala. I mean, we've seen these border people, you will, very convenient, by the way. You're in your office and you tell them, you know what, you go get me this from here, go get me from this. And they have several people who do that.
Yeah. Children from school.
Exactly. They pick children from school because, you know, parents are probably at work. They're too busy to go and pick this. So they have built a clientele over time. So now you're sending them back to their home areas where they don't have this clientele. Now imagine a border man who doesn't have this clientele, a border man who doesn't have that amount of money to be able to clear all the entire registration. That is going to leave them with nothing to do. And I feel like this is going to actually drive them back to what they were doing before. This is where I actually see a lot of criminal, cases rising, but this time around in the outskirts. If they have been in Kampala, since they are cleared out of Kampala, go back to the outskirts. I don't know, Mukono, Nansana, where? I have a feeling that there's going to be a rise in all these criminal acts because most of these people are not occupied. You have stopped them from doing that. And now you did talk about some of the things that they need, that identification cards. How long does it take you to get this? You have given these men 4 months. This border population is over about 28,000 people. So I want you to do that basic mathematics, 4 months, and how long it takes, for these ministries to come through and give them all this identification. So all this really, it's under the umbrella of practicability. This, they will probably need a little bit more time, or actually it may not work out. But also looking at the positives, I think it's going to create a little bit more accountability, okay, and also security. I think it's easy for you to trace if this border man has a jacket that has because I understand they're going to have these QR codes where you can actually scan, and all these eventually
his photo, his name,
his photo,
number,
his name, yeah. So
division.
It's easy for you to track and know whoever was doing this is probably from this division by the fact that they were putting on the jacket. So I think the security and the accountability will be there, but for me, I feel like the bigger percentage is going to be more on the negative impacts, and they need to really think through some of these. Either they extend the time to make sure that they fill all these gaps, all these loopholes, or this may as well not work out, because we have also seen this project take off all the way from 2020. It has been postponed, they push it to 2021, and then we have this COVID coming in, and then they give it an extension period. So I hope and pray that this still doesn't happen for 2022.
Yesterday evening, I made a call to the Minister for Kampala, that is Chofato Gabye, the man at the center, who is saying it must work. It could have failed this time, it must work. And he told me those that dare not to abide by this, his simple calculation is about fines about 10 billion. And he said, this will do me good in terms of the roads you're demanding and all this. If I can get 10 billion from you who decide to be errant and do not abide by the regulations.
He said that?
Yes.
10 billion.
10 billion, yes, in terms of fines. That is what they're looking at.
And he's banking on that as a source of development?
Well, he's saying if they choose not to. He is. He's more than determined.
You guys must have had a light moment. I'm thinking. I don't want to take that in context. You must have seated somewhere and you're talking casually as colleagues.
Interesting.
Because
and even after that, I even saw him on some media still emphasizing the same issue.
Let me tell you something, Robert.
But Felix, what I wanted to bring to you, Philo has talked about possibilities. And one of the issues here that is causing, rising a lot of dust among this committee is Felix Nkunda stays in Lubaga. He's coming to Kampala Central, where Uganda Broadcasting Corporation is to. So, a border carries you to a certain place and says, now from here, I cannot proceed with you. Get another border. How practical? One division, because you work in that division, each division is going to have its own color. Maybe for you, Lubaga, I think they chose already blue. I think was it orange, so you don't cross to another zone. Practicability of this.
I'll tell you, I think the guys who crafted this were quite smart, and I want to give them credit. Though some, as I've always said, if you seek to make policy, one of the reasons, or one of the things that guarantees sustainability is inclusion. That's why for some of us who are heads of families, we don't make such, you ask Philo, what do you think we do? If you are to buy land, where is the best place? Then she'll tell you, oh, this place is better because one, it's on the way to our village. That's a good one. There's a church around there. There are even a number of schools. But also there's a hospital not far from that place. Now, in that when you get to that place, like she's
whatever
part
may
of,
arise
so
from,
she will fight because she's part of it.
Yes.
Now, when you make some of these decisions and you don't include the primary stakeholders, because you can't say, you must include them. And they advise you, by the way. You may look at them as being whatever, but they will give some advice. How practical some of these things are. Now, between you and me, there are maybe 3 or 4 reasons why people use borders. One, quick to access. That's the major one. That border, most of the time is not held by traffic. So it's about quickness. Second, it could be also about cheap in terms of execution. For example, imagine you are going to, let's say from Ruraga, as you say, to Kampala. It could cost about 3,000 to 4,000. Now, it means you're saving time, but if you want to use taxis, you'll get a taxi from Rubaga to the maybe old tax park, then from there you get, which is more or less the same amount. But the third one is that there's something that comes with convenience. Convenience. Now, if you want to tell me, Robert, I'm going to stop at I don't know how even practical that is. I'm just trying to think it out. And you stop me at Queensway, then someone else brings me to town. So what if I am going to Mukono? How many borders will I take?
A number of them.
Probably 7. Because this one will take me up to the lights down here, then the other will take me to Nakawa, then from Nakawa I'll get to Chambogo, then from Chambogo to Banda, then Banda to Chireka.
If your child has been studying at Kampala parents, just or Green Hill, any school, and now you have this particular border.
Who normally drops?
Who drops the child, picks the child.
So you have to get 3 borders. I think that's for me not practical. The zones are good, but you see every general rule has an exception. What are the exceptions to some of the rules you're putting in place? One thing we shouldn't forget as we try to make all these laws is that everything we do it for better livelihood of Ugandans. Every policy should be to better, not to harden livelihood of Ugandans. This is quite symbolic that you want to, in fact, I've had some politicians suggest that this is a way of how this institution wants to do away with borders. You get it? Because between you and me, who's going to get a border Sawaya Queen, then Naira Valley? Who? It doesn't make sense. So we must try and find what are the exemptions to some of these general rules for us to make sense of the industry. One thing I'll re-echo, you said earlier, in as much as all these things are going on, we must not forget that countries like Uganda, third world, we struggle with employment. And government, as the biggest employer, doesn't even have capacity to employ not even 30% of the population. But when you get some of these informal avenues that help government, you increase government revenue. I don't know, we need a report on how much fuel borders consume in a day. Who has got that report? But every time you limit their transactions, you're equally pinching government. So you must be able to choose. It's a sweet, sour pill. But guess what? You may have to take the sour pill because it is what will heal the body. Now, if you start curtailing all these things, it means that if they have been, let's say, consuming 1 billion of fuel a day, they'll get to 200 million, 500, 200. Because you're limiting the transactions. So how about we enhance the good in some services and not just look at it from the issue of we need to decongest, I think we need to look at what's good in this industry and see how to assist. But we cannot, some of these things are really not practical, but I don't see myself getting 7 borders to Mukono. It is not, I don't know, but that's my opinion. I think we need to look at the latter good in borders. In terms of money, government earns from these people. Indirectly, they earn a lot. Look at, let's imagine, in the morning, a border man, let's say Kirabo, comes to town. They get fuel, they'll buy something to eat, you get it, maybe something to drink, then they'll buy something to take home. Those are all factors of economic.
The trickle-down effect.
They have an effect on how the economy moves. Now, it means that the people who are in the markets who are selling some of these things, let's imagine 7 border people buy mangoes every evening in a market, and they won't be able to buy them. Now, the market lady who sells the mangoes also, where they are getting them, it works. It's a chain of economics is a chain of things. Now, if you want to grow a city and a nation at large, you don't just come up with blanket, you get it. Even you don't come with just blanket policies. You must think through. Some of the things, some of the yardsticks that are brought in these policies are really good, like earmarking, or what you want to call identity. That's very key in terms of security. The registration is very key in terms of, but these things of limited spaces, we must find an exemption to them. And you said, our students, our children, some of these people help us. Because not every parent is able to drop and pick. But we have people who help us. Now, what happens to the students? Are there exemptions for carrying students in terms of zones? All these things we must discuss. Some kids study in places like Chireka, but they stay in, let's say, Mengo. So we need to strike a balance.
Philo, let's look at our neighbors in Kenya. When you go to Nairobi, I know this is something you've also witnessed, you'll find that you don't have these border people within the city center.
Yes.
However, they have their matatus. and they are doing good, fairly enough, in terms of business. Benchmarking from our neighbors, coming back home, we know that maybe by May would be the deadline where this must be fully into action coming to Uganda. Let's, a case in point, as we know, do you see this working out for our country, given sometimes politics and planning mingling together? Already you've begun hearing some voices of politicians saying this is just a government intention to ensure that the borders are out of the city, because in most of these riots, most of these uprisings, their presence, they have been a menace. So these are just intentions that let's do away with this group that has constantly either spearheaded or been so active in some of these riots and protests we've seen in the city.
Well, I don't really want to put it exactly even on the politics or anything. It's just the efficiency of the, organizations or companies or even stakeholders that are in charge. For example, KCCA. Now, I love the fact that you do highlight Kenya. Kenya, Nairobi, there is nowhere you can find a border in town. But you know what happens? They do have matatus that have these specified stages where they actually stop. These, actually, they're like buses. Now, when we talk about buses, if you remember back in 2020 in Uganda here, they did 2021 in July, no, 2020 in July, they said before they roll out these, these border stages and all that and all these border zones, Kampala was going to have these buses. They did talk about that. Where are these buses?
We once had some buses.
We had
I
them,
see some of them very old and rich.
Honestly, I can't even tell you where they are. Yes. Well, Pioneer or, where are they? They did talk about that. Now, that is the system that
they're
Kenya
even going to remove
on.
the taxis so that you use buses within the city.
So where are they? And here we have a period of about 4 months for all these borders to go where they're supposed to be. So where are the buses that are going to take us? So this does not even get back to politics or whatever. It's just the stakeholders that are supposed to do that. If KCCA made a pledge to do this, why are you not doing it? Where is the problem? Do you not have the funds? If you don't have the funds, what have you done about it? So sometimes I think we even use some of these excuses just to cover up, and forgive my language, but to cover up for their incompetences. Yes, so it's not all about politics or, these big people having a say in whatever. No, what is your role as KCCA? If you make the pledge to do this, because it's the alternative, you're getting rid of all these borders away from town. You're bringing in the buses. Bring the buses.
Don't put the cart before the horse.
Yes, don't do that.
Someone has to move from maybe Queensway to dozens of, let's say,
actually, just to make it very clear for you, if you move around town, you're going to see these signposts. Some have been removed, but somewhere there's a border and across Wampeo Avenue there, around Airtel, you find one. There are about a few of them that you can find. So it means, Felix, if you're coming to work from that Airtel roundabout, around there, that's where the signpost, I think, is. You have to walk to here if there is no border, because then that will be a border free zone.
Who is catering for the disabled people? Because we have a Personal Disabilities Act that talks about access to premises. It is very clear. Who's talking about that?
The alternatives they were giving you was riding. You can ride a bicycle.
The person is disabled.
And the person said even walking is healthy.
For disabled people?
For a disabled person who's using a wheelchair.
Because we must keep in mind,
pushing or moving all that distance, to here.
I think we need to have more discussion into this with the authorities and majorly the stakeholders. My great concern is with disabled persons, our children in schools. Now there were kids from Nakasero, the Uganda roads of this world. You drop them where? Sawaya Queen, then they walk all that.
Because every single evening
how safe are they?
All these borders right there waiting
with
for
kids,
these,
their children to drop here. Yes. But then how you see some of these things, as I've told you, we rush. How much security are you putting in place for the foot people? Our children. People are going to be clobbered. You have thugs in this city everywhere. Now, Kugamba, it's a bit hard.
Well, we hope and pray that whatever government
is
coming up with to regulate this industry should be pro-people. should be pro-people, because at the end of the day, leaders are put in place to come out with policies that better the livelihood of people, not only going in for regulations, because at the end of the day, these are rules, these are policies that have an impact on the livelihood of people. But we promise you, we shall have more of this talk with the experts and of course the stakeholders anytime soon. When we return, we'll be looking at what is trending in the print media. Good morning and keep it with us.
Are your children ready to learn? Schools are open. As parents and guardians, it is your duty to ensure that your children go back to school. COVID-19 prevention measures have been put in place to keep students safe as they go back to school. Not only do teachers prioritize everyone's health, including their own, but they discourage violence among students. They also ensure that students follow SOPs. Any concerns are reported to a school administrator or senior woman or man teacher for correction and further guidance. Dear parents and guardians, you too must play your role. Ensure your children always maintain a 2-meter distance from others, avoid crowded places, regularly wash their hands with soap and water, and wear a washed and clean face mask that covers their mouths and noses. Please keep your children at home if they're feeling sick, and take note. In our effort to keep students safe, there are no visitation days or any other school visits allowed. Let's share knowledge, not COVID-19. This message is supported by the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education and Sports, and UNICEF. Stay safe.
Start your day bright and early with Good Morning Bundles from Airtel. That's right. Enjoy brighter days with 2 GB at 5,000 shillings, valid for 24 hours. Join that morning agent meeting. Close that online business deal. Catch up with loved ones. Do it all with the most affordable data bundles. Dial *175# to buy Good Morning Bundles from 12 a.m. to 11:59 a.m. and enjoy 2 GB valid for 24 hours from time of purchase. Good Morning Bundles for the best day ahead with Airtel, the smartphone network.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, of course, with just 25 minutes to the top of the hour, we'll take you through the papers now in the Daily Monitor. The big headline: Government Sudir plan shillings, at least 140 billion joint deal. What is in that deal? What to expect? Get yourself papers and we'll look at it now. Queen catches COVID-19 from Hassan, and government issues guidelines on old passports. Now, strangers demarcate plots at Old Kampala, at Old Taxi Park rather, and what are the chances of getting pregnant after 45 years? But also in the big picture there in the front paper, New Orthodox Archbishop calls for political tolerance, which is one of those things that almost is in the lips of every other head. Now, what are the chances of one getting pregnant after 45? That's a question that is quite interesting. But still, inside the papers, strangers demarcate plots in Old Tax Park there. And it's funny. Today in history, Uganda activist Malcolm X assassinated, US activist Malcolm X assassinated at rally, and Israeli fighter jet shoots down Libyan airline.
New Vision paper, we'll look at the big headline over there. What probe team recommended on Milo land? And this is actually an exclusive. The system has generated conflicts, says Bamugemerewe in this report. And also taking a look at, again, like what is trending right now, Musei enthroned as the Orthodox Archbishop. And you can actually see several leaders there trying to congratulate His Eminence. And also how to access the parish model money. And also in your health section, we are talking about heart disease, how you can save your child, and also teachers headcount to start today. And moving on to the second page of the Vision paper, available opportunities in car manufacturing sector. Of course, these are opportunities in business. And we also take a look at today in history. And I see Malcolm X there assassinated. Well, you need to get yourself a copy of the New Vision today to find out more details on this. And there is also a COVID tracker for you over there.
Now still in the papers, now we get into sports. Can anyone stop Athens' charge? Now also Stanbic Uganda Cup, that is a Jogo in nasty accident. Their Villa team escaped with injuries after their bus crashed on the way to Gulu for cup ties there. Now Nakalembe in right mindset to pro ranks, and KCCA with a point of Vipers. Now still in sports, UCU top league after empathetic win over Doves, and Nakalembe joins pro rank. But also underwater challenge sinks Talone further in Altona.
And in the Vision Sports, the big story here is there room to progress. We also take a look at Obua Could Do Anything, the first in the 5 parts series, where actually they say Obua was the best at it. And also why are players recycled? There is also your weekly guide over there, and also taking a look at how KCCA closed in, and also the Villa team survived Niger bus crash. So make sure you grab yourself copies of these papers this Monday morning.
Also into the Daily Nation, now amidst your big catch, Raila Kalonzo, each closer to 2022 poll deal. Now also the big question, why is he still in office? I have no space to retreat and do not have the luxury to surrender, he says. That is William Ruto. There now, pay me my 14 million, student tells the state. And of course, Kenya on high alert as polio cases detected in Malawi's capital. But of course, basically that's what's in the papers. But for now, we'll also cross on to the roads now with Philo. Philo will be giving us what's on the roads and why you can use to maneuver into the heart of the city. But before that, she'll take a look at the poll question. On to you, Phil.
And the poll question was, and it still is, what can be done to enhance the quality of Uganda's agricultural products to match international markets? The feedback is starting to come in, and from you, James Okalebo, you're saying Ugandans should avoid the overuse of fertilizers to meet the international standard. Well, the hashtag is UBCGMU, and of course you can send us an SMS text or a WhatsApp text on 0709 602 592. We will be giving the feedback as Good Morning Uganda extends on. But getting to the roads this morning, well, it's a combination that's a little bit not the kind that is wanted. We have the rains that really kicked in as early as 4 a.m. this morning, but also it's a Monday, and usually on an ordinary Monday, the traffic is heavy as it is. And when it rains, still the traffic is heavy. So you can add up the two and see what happens. And probably what I will be telling you this morning can actually give you the responses. As you can see, we have several orange spots, we have several red spots, and we actually have several maroon, which shows the intensity. Now, when you see a spot like this, it tells you that this area is actually a no-go area. If you have the alternative, it would be the ideal thing for you to take on. And I want to focus on the main road, that is Kampala-Jinja Highway, all the way to Kampala City Center and also City Square. So we are majorly focusing on Kampala Division this morning. And I will take you straight from the roundabout about Ministry of Internal Affairs, Uganda. You see this red stretch. Now this connects you to the roundabout here. Now this is crazy. It shows you that the cars are many. All the road users are probably converged here because, well, they are all trying to make sure that they get to the city center. Now, of course, when you're using this route, that means if you're coming from Nakawa, if you're coming from Chireka, if you're coming from Mukono, all these definitely will still drive you here. Now, when you're entering the city, that is where it's going to hit you more. But if you're leaving the city, as you can see, there is an orange stretch here, but it shows you that, well, the traffic buildup is there, but it's not something that you need to worry about. And then there is a green stretch. But usually for a Monday morning, it's very hard to find people who are leaving the city center unless your workplace or your destination for this morning is outside the city center. But this is very important for you to be ready to brace yourself for. But also, this usually happens because it's a roundabout, so there are many cars that are trying to access to make sure that they, finalize with the routes they're going to. And as you can see, also this route which brings you from Wampel Avenue, there is a red stretch here which shows you that it's also intense. So you may have wanted to use other shortcuts if you haven't yet gotten here. So it is green all the way from up here, but when you get to the roundabout, it's crazy. However, when you manage to maneuver through this traffic here that is really, really intense and you decide to go all the way, well, you can see the green lines there, but also there are some red lines, some orange spots, which are a very, very long stretch, which shows you that, yes, the traffic buildup is really, really heavy, and eventually it culminates into a heavy traffic. So much as you may get through all this, you need to also have expectations of a heavy traffic ahead. Now also there are cars that could probably be using the access road up there from Yusuf Lule Road to get into the main road. I want to tell you that there is a traffic buildup right there, and Yusuf Lule Road, much as it's usually used, it's actually clear for this morning. So you may, as opposed to getting to the main road, which is Kampala, which is Ginger Road, you may decide to take a detour off from Yusuf Lule Road if you're coming from Wandega, if you're coming from Chira Road and you use this as a shortcut. You could take a detour off and use Nile Avenue. Nile Avenue is actually manageable. As you can see, it's in green, so it's a very good option for you to avoid all the traffic that has built way ahead of it. So you could use Nile Avenue right there. Yes, there are some orange spots there, but it shouldn't worry you. It shows you there is a traffic buildup, but it's manageable. So either way, you will be able to beat the traffic or to be able to make it in time. Now, all this still takes you all the way from Nile Avenue. Eventually, you get to Speak Road. Now, that road is very, very clear. So I think this is the ideal road for you, because down there are very many road users, like I always tell you, prefer to use the main road. I don't know why shortcuts usually give a problem. Very many people assume that everyone has decided to take a shortcut, but maybe sometimes you need to take risks on the road, because if you keep using the main route, well, everybody's using the main route, so it's really, really crowded. So you may use this Nile Avenue, which is very, very clear, and eventually it still takes you all the way to City Square, which is, more or less at the city center. So it's a good option for you. But again, if you are still using the main road from Ginger Road, as you go ahead, you continue connecting to Kampala Road. Kampala Road is not nice at all. Look at all this entire stretch. Orange, all the motorists are out here. There is a traffic buildup. Now, you would probably think that when you're done with this traffic buildup, you'll get into a clear lane. But, well, I do have some bad news for you, because from this buildup, you'll get to an intensified area where you see this red zone. Now, this is a link from cars that are actually using Entebbe Road to get onto Kampala Road. And then again, they cause a little bit of chaos there, which also still leads into the traffic buildup. Now, this stretches all the way to Kampala Road. So maybe it's a very good option to use any other route. So as you can see, maybe if you have, by all means, have to use Kampala Road, use it. But if you have alternatives, well, you need to use those and avoid this road. Like I told you, it's a Monday morning and it has rained, so it's chaos plus chaos. I don't know what you get after that. Maybe Mollen can tell us. Mollen, have you ever understood the relationship between the rains and Kampala traffic? I don't know. I have tried to figure this out, but it's clearly it's not something that I am yet to find out. So probably you could help out on this one.
Well, from my experience, I think you look at the fact that whenever it rains, everyone wants to drive.
Yes.
There are those days where people leave their cars home. Maybe they are rushing somewhere. Maybe, they don't have fuel. But when it rains, however much you have that small money you're saving aside, that is going to go for the fuel, and you're going to have to go to work with a car. So I think that also creates the traffic on the road, because everyone is trying to get in there. I guess so far I've been able to relate it to that, but also not to mention that some people avoid certain roads or shortcuts that would have been used on dry days. So they all get to the main road, and that creates the traffic within the main road. So I guess also that contributes to the fact that now you want to avoid the bad places that, you know, come up with the rain, and you're all on the same road, and that creates traffic. So far, I have those two reasons, but we can continue to make some research.
We'll keep doing our investigations, but it actually makes a very clear explanation. Everybody wants to take their car out because no one wants to, you know, travel under the rains. No one wants to get to their office dripping. It's not really a nice look for the eye. Well, that's it from the traffic updates, but Mollen is here to give you the weather forecast and more from the climate news. Well, it's going to be raining like this for the rest of the day. Maybe you need to carry an umbrella, maybe a jacket. Probably you should. You just never know what could happen. Well, from me, Philomena, Mastiko, have a wonderful and productive Monday morning.
Well, thank you, Philo. Now, earlier today, we were talking about luck and the rains. Now, I don't see where the good luck comes in when you have to go to work and it's raining on you, because not everyone is having that car or able to get to public means. Either way, it's going to rain on you just from your home to the roadside. Where is the good luck there? So I still have an argument that says, no, there is no good luck that is coming with the rains, except that it is good news. We're going to start planting. And last week we did see the East African Prediction Center, ICPAC, partnering with a lot of national meteorological centers to come out with a forecast for our March to May rainy seasons. And I can tell you one thing, that this year's rainy season is actually a good one. And we're looking at much more of the rains expected compared to the last 3 seasons that have been mostly like failed seasons. So I can say this is a good start. We're looking at some of those rains starting to set in, but a lot of areas within the southern part of the country are most likely to be the lucky ones, if we bring in luck again, because they will be starting with those rains earlier compared to the rest of the country. But we'll be giving you more details as the National Center continues to downscale that forecast and look at specifically which areas can we look out for and when to actually start planting. But I can tell you one thing, this is the right time to actually start preparing and look forward for those rains to come through. If you have your gardens, please make sure they're ready. If the rains start to kick in, then you can start the planting. But away from that, we also want to look at what is happening now. This week, we are expecting most of the states across the UN, and that is the UN member states, to actually meet in Nairobi. And the talk is going to be about the end of single plastic use. Now, this is kind of good news. This could be the first time ever that we are seeing member states agree to some kind of accord to stop, use of single-use plastics. Now, there's been a lot of talk about using Kavera, even other plastics, and it seems like we have not implemented much more of the policies even around the topic. But for the first time, we're seeing the UN member states meet up to make sure they put an end to this kind of talk and have that agreement. Now, this is happening this month, and we'll be getting details of what comes up from that meeting, which will be held in Nairobi. And hopefully this puts across an image that shows that the world is actually willing to put across something to end plastic use. This is a danger to our environment. Now, plastics do not allow water to go through. They do harm to the soils. It's something we want to end, and this is something that the UN has committed to, and I'm glad to see that they're actually meeting over this. Now, you talk about the end of single-use plastics, and Uganda did try that. We actually came up with an act last year that was showing that we're going to end that. We had that end Kavera, hashtag. There was a lot of talk about that. Ministry of Water and Environment was at the forefront of making sure that we had that implemented. Now, I don't know about the implementation, because I am still seeing those plastics, those Kaveras on the market. Where did that end? That's the question that we're still asking, and we demand answers. Hopefully, with these member states coming together and having this kind of agreement, we also now have to add on what we've committed to as a country to make sure that we end the use of Kavera. This is what is getting us to the bad news that we normally talk about every morning here on the devastating events that are happening across the world. Now, also talking about that, we did read a story this morning about Brazil, which was last hit by floods and mudslides, and a lot of lives being lost to such extreme weather events. But we also saw a tropical storm Eunice that did hit parts of Amsterdam, and that devastated the area. Now, so far, we have over 150,000 homes that are without power because of the effects of the storm. Now, this did also cause a lot of flooding on the streets. Most of the cars that actually ended up being flooded, and also there are reports that some of the containers so far are not seen. Close to 26 containers that have been lost due to the effect of tropical storm Eunice that has been across the area. Now, this did start off on Friday, and so far these guys are still dealing with the aftermath, looking at 150,000 homes still without power, and that is quite an extent of how most of these events related to heavy rainfall can actually affect an area. Now, we're still talking about Madagascar. This area I've not seen an area having been hit by this amount of cyclones within just, such kind of frequency within just 1 month. Now, just last week we were talking about the effect of Dumako. That was a tropical storm that developed close to Madagascar, and so far the reports that we have is that 14 people have died because of this tropical storm. Now, what happened is that there has been heavy rains, and a lot of homes were destroyed close to the coast, and we are looking at so far the death toll from that coming to 14 in number. Now, as if that is not enough, we now have another tropical cyclone that is raging across the area. Now, it is following the path of tropical cyclone Feburaury that happened just like 19 days ago, and that caused a lot of damage across Madagascar. We're looking at a death toll of 121 people that died from that tropical cyclone. Now, we're looking at another storm, another cyclone, and that is Nkunda, that is also following the same pathway like the one we had in Feburaury. Now, not to mention the fact that this area has just been hit by Dumako, which we're talking about with people dying, close to 14 people. Now, this cyclone is actually very strong. It's looking at most of the effects so far also being felt across Madagascar. Is already how the strong winds coming in. Now, people have already evacuated some of the places close to the coast, but there is still a lot of work to be done, because there are people who are also still in the pathway of this cyclone that could still be affected. Now, also the forecast that we have for this cyclone that is coming through across all the weather centers from this morning, we're saying that it has already brought effects across Mauritius and Reunion, which are the areas that have been most hit by this cyclone so far. Now, Nkunda is coming in strong with winds of about 120 kilometers per hour. Now, that is a high speed wind. If you can imagine a windy day where trees are falling off, that's the kind of strength that is coming with this cyclone. Now, that is already headed towards Madagascar, looking at mostly central Madagascar. That could also bring effects to Antananarivo, that is the country's capital, and most of the islands so far actually already being affected by this. And it's also expected that after it makes landfall, it could bring effects to even areas of Mozambique and Malawi, also likely to be hit. We're also looking at some of the coastal areas across South Africa. Now, it looks like even within the 24 hours that it was first forecast, it was already hitting Mauritius towards Reunion, already in that red, where you see those red lines. Now, that is the circles for the path of the cyclone. You can see the area in Madagascar that is actually likely to be most hit. Now, in the next 24 hours, it's also likely to be moving through. Now, 48 hours, that is expected to have wind speed of 195 kilometers per hour. Now, that you imagine a kind of winds that will uproot the trees from the ground. That's the speed at which this cyclone is coming through, and it is likely to make landfall then in the next 72 hours from now. We're looking at also the wind speed decreasing to 150 kilometers per hour. Now, this is the kind of cyclone that will bring much more effects. We could be looking at more numbers of people dying. If you look at Feburaury bringing in 121 death toll, but also destruction of homes. We had over 190,000 homes being destroyed, and almost the whole island to the south of Madagascar was destroyed. Now, these people are already having to depend on humanitarian, acts. We had UNICEF go through. Actually, we also had the UK government donate quite a huge sum of money to make sure that these people are relocated and put in, other relocation centers. But not to mention that this is now being frequent over the area. And already scientists are saying something needs to be done for this kind of extreme weather events that we're seeing. Now, the frequency across Madagascar is one evidence that this is a climate crisis we're looking at. It's not just here, but for the last 50 years, I can tell you this is the first time we're seeing cyclones hit Madagascar at such a frequency, which is something that should be worrying because no one is safe. We could be looking at much more of these storms develop even for other areas of Africa, especially the southern part of Africa, which has been worst hit. Now, we are lucky that here in Uganda, and if you look at, we're close to East Africa, we are in the middle, we are in the tropics, what we call the tropics, quite where there is actually that kind of weather that we hardly get to experience most of those cyclones because of temperatures. They are not favorable for some of those cyclones to form. But we are also not safe because even years back we did see cyclones actually that formed close to East Africa, and we also had effects of that. So it could get to that level, and what is worrying is that we're not paying enough attention to the emergency at hand. We're not making it look like we need to fight this, we need to stop this from happening. And the good thing is that we have time to actually divert this. But when we tell people the only way out of this is abolish, stop using fossil fuels, and we're still going for those. Avoid deforestation, we're still cutting down the trees. And the use of single plastic use, we are still dumping plastics. What is going to happen? It looks like there is no effort being done, but I still have hope that people can change their ways and we can avert most of this crisis already, and that is my hope, and we could all look forward to that. But anyway, away from what seems to be bad news, we also want to look at the good luck that did come in this morning across the country, and we're going to tap in from the satellites over Uganda right now. Take a look at how the weather is looking like across the country, and we will start off with that rainy system that is stretching from Lake Victoria. Now, this is the rainmaker for the morning rains that we've seen across most areas. Now, that is covering mostly across the western part of Lake Victoria. Masaka already having that strong storm, even up to now, looking at mostly rainy conditions. Now, it seems like most of those have started to clear across Kampala, but those are the rains that we did start off with. If you look at the colors so far across Kampala, you look at those from yellow, now it's coming to blue colors, meaning we're starting to clear up actually. But areas of central, you look at Mollen already having those rains, and across southwestern Uganda, you look at Mbarara, also towards areas of Bushenyi, close to Kasese as well, still having those rainy conditions as we speak. We are looking at also the southern part of Lake Victoria Basin towards the west, that is across Sembabule Rengo, also still having those rainy conditions, and most likely those will continue for much of the morning. If you look at how that is playing out, it looks like most of that system is moving westwards, so meaning that the western part of Lake Victoria as well as southwestern Uganda might be dealing with those rains for the rest of the morning today. But you also look at some of the areas that are likely to have that kind of wet weather this morning. We're looking at the northwestern part of the country. Now, this area has been quite dry, but you look at least some good news coming in through. We do have that rainy system that started off earlier this morning. It looks like it is intensifying. If you look at the colors from blue to the yellow, that means the system is intensifying. Most likely it will be bringing us much more of those rains across the area. We also look at most of the cloudy conditions that are still developing across Lake Choga region towards Moria, Mbale as well, having those cloudy conditions. Now, most likely most of those will clear into sunny intervals, but we are still having a forecast for rainy conditions, especially for the southern part of the country. You also look at midwestern Uganda, where we have Hoima close to Areas of Fort Portal and Njoroko also did start off with a little bit of those rains earlier this morning, and those expected to continue into the afternoon. Now, as we head into the afternoon, we could be looking at much more of those conditions, especially across southwestern Uganda. You also look at parts of central as well as the Lake Victoria Basin. That system might still be there. So this is why I tell you, if you're leaving home, please make sure you're not leaving that warm jacket. It might be helpful even later, because we're looking at temperatures keeping a little bit down, as those clouds will still be over the skies. But now for the Karamoja region, northern Uganda, eastern Uganda is still quite dry, so you might be looking at sunny intervals throughout the day. So that is one area that you can actually relax, have some light clothing. But the rest of the country, you still are in for those rains that could be coming your way. So even when you're leaving, you can still have that umbrella with you to make sure that it doesn't rain on you. It doesn't look good if it rains on you and you have the forecast, looking at the forecast. So it's quite impressive how you can get out of the house and you're prepared for the weather, and it starts raining and you're just pulling out your umbrella and you're like, yeah, I got the forecast. So thanks to UBC, it can't rain on me. Well, I want to leave you at that and wish you quite a good morning. We have more coming your way. We will be having Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up. Robert will be here to take you through that. Have a wonderful morning.
Our Ugandan story isn't a new one. It's not about where we come from. It's about what can be accomplished when we're working, living, and growing together. It's about speaking the same language, the language of progress. We're Ugandans building Uganda with Ugandans, skilling Ugandans and developing competencies required in the oil and gas sector, partnering with Ugandan businesses to achieve greatness. We're here to build, because at the end of the day, we're truly Ugandan.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by
Tulantende ku program obulamu.
Was brought to you by
Just use MTN to make calls, send SMS, load airtime, buy bundles, or pay for MTN subscription services.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
COVID-19 is still here with us. As Professor Maggie Chigozi states, the time is now for all of us to get vaccinated.
When we have one person who's not vaccinated, it affects everybody around them, most especially the ones close to you. Keep your family safe. Anyone right now who's over 18 should go and get vaccinated.
Because of the new COVID-19 circulating variants like Omicron, it is very important for all of us to be fully vaccinated with 2 doses of the same vaccine type. It's only those getting Johnson & Johnson who receive only a single dose to be fully protected.
Even after vaccination, continue to adhere to all SOPs by wearing a mask properly, covering your mouth and nose, washing your hands regularly with soap and clean water, or using an alcohol-based sanitizer, maintaining physical distance of at least 2 meters from others, and avoiding crowds. Echa COVID-19, chija kugwa. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and partners.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body, because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Your MBs are now bigger MBs only on MTN. When you load a daily band of 250